is
Okay, there we
muted.
go.
Let me switch to this microphone because that should be a little better, although they're all pretty good.
And I never got the articles.
I just emailed it. It should be on its way.
Okay.
Hi.
Come on,
This is everybody's hearing the behind the scenes of this. It's fantastic. I'm
Oh,
very
are we on
excited.
YouTube now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Hi,
Let's see.
YouTube.
Yeah,
I'll get in the comments.
exactly. And then let's see. I gotta put in Chicago. No, I don't. Chicago. I want. I don't want that. Okay, so what do I need? I need sound effects in that. And then your interview is turned up, and that's just fine. It might be a little loud. Hi, chat room. We're working on it. We're coming in hot. Show's about to start in a minute. I think Philip's going to be joining us as well later on. And we shall see what we shall see. I sent him the link, so hopefully he got it. And we should be all right. All right. Good morning, everybody in the chat room. They're starting to gather. It's good times. Radio will begin in just a moment. Johnny, are you decent? Can I bring you on board?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Let's just jump right in. Oh, look at that. The little graphic came in and stuff. I'm going to take that out, though, because we're not going to look at that till later. And then we're ready and up for guest number 2 if he arrives at any point. Yes, Phil is in Lviv, insofar as I know. They've taken some shelling, which is pretty scary. But we will, thank you, we'll get an update as it goes. And man, it is the fascinatings today.
Oh, you muted again. Or did you just stop talking?
All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. Very excited to be here with you today, and yet another week of no news, nothing really happening.
No.
Yeah. I mean, we're just this is the phone it in century. That's all
Yeah,
that's
I'm cool with
occurring.
that.
Johnny, how was your? You did a half marathon this morning. I think that's the only news
I
we're going to
ran a
cover
half
today.
marathon this morning. It wasn't my best, but it was cold and rainy, and I did it. I finished.
Well, that's all it takes, and a half marathon, for the people that don't know, is a full marathon you do on one leg. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay, I want people to know that I am up on not only the lingoing but on the reality behind it. For those of us live streaming at infotainmentwars.com or at fwank.com, welcome to the show. Of course, twitch.tv/HalSparks. Don't forget to subscribe if you have Amazon Prime. It doesn't cost you a dime. And then, of course, we broke that 30,000 barrier on YouTube, and we're very proud. Now, we are obviously playing catch up with those that have been on YouTube and the other sites for the better part of a decade or so. Laid the groundwork. Dig your well before you're thirsty, they say. So these folks have been at it for a long time. Much kudos to those folks who have managed to have great success on the YouTubes and the Twitches, even if they are maniacs. And thank you, Hal Vickery, for the super chat. Appreciate that. Oh my gosh, it's his birthday. Hal Vickery's birthday. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. He gave us are you 72 today? Is that it? So here's $1 for every year he's been on the planet. Yep, that's what it is.
Oh.
Thank you, Hal Vickery. I feel like we owe you $1 for every day you've been on the planet, dear friend. So thank you for being here with us. And I understand there's a lot of confusion back and forth in the world out there. Thank you, Robert Brunswick, as well, for the super chats. That's one of the ways that people support the show. Also on Facebook. We're back on Facebook. We were temporarily not on Facebook because of security measures. But we
yours
fixed
or
that,
theirs?
right? I don't know. And I don't care at this point. Like, I'm only on Facebook so that my mom can recommend my show to her friends. And for some of the people who choose that as a venue, to be able to stick to it, because I don't think you should have to shepherd anybody over to another site necessarily. But now there was a fascinating post this morning, Johnny Million, which I thoroughly enjoyed on Twitter. This was a Russian. So Philip just said he's going to join us. He got the link, I guess, so he should be good. He's going to join us at the half hour. There was a Russian story about I guess it's, let's see, Lukashenko, who is one of Putin's professional liars that he has working for him. And
right on.
Yeah, and he says Putin is more alive than anyone else, will survive us all. He's in top shape. He's never been more in his right mind, and he will, quote, only catch a cold at our funerals. Which...
So this is like North Korea vibes.
It sounds like Ronnie Jackson talking about Trump's height and weight, but it also
there's that too.
Right, remember?
And also and then Putin played golf for the first time and got a hole-in-one on every hole.
That's right. He hit the ball and he was so fast he run and catch it and he slam dunk in hole, and then he ate the flag and crapped out golf tees for everyone to use, and everyone collected them as the great thing. Now, if this is... You and I are old enough as Gen Xers to remember in the 70s when we were teensy-tiny, jokes about if the news came out and said that the Russian premier had the sniffles, it meant that he had been diagnosed. He was diagnosed with cancer. If they said he's laying down to rest, that means they've already buried him. And there's a lot of that to this particular, and the guy is very defiant. Well, yesterday, oddly enough, the timing of this is very curious, because yesterday there was this big Trump rally-esque, let's all clap for the death of Ukrainians gathering in Russia that was compulsory for a lot of people, because freedom. It's the kind of freedom that Tucker Carlson likes. It's the kind of freedom that Trump wishes we had here, which is the freedom for whoever's in charge, totally, to make people go. So during this thing, he's giving this speech, gets a little long-winded, let's be honest. Basically, like Trump, repeating phrases that we've heard him say before. And in this particular case, even though it's Putin, there's a little bit of this fuzzy brain stuff going on. Did he already say that? I think he already said that, right? We've done this, and anybody who watches my regular live stream, HAL Sparks Mega Worldwide, daily on YouTube and Twitch and all these sites.
Hard to miss.
It's true. Anybody who watches that knows we've covered the Trump rallies. We've covered all of them, whether we like it or not. And we've noticed a brain fuzz that has increased over the last year, largely due to age, stress, and bad diet. And over the course of the last 6 months, his repetition and kind of, blurring of his speech has gotten worse, not only at the rallies, but also in interviews. He has this weird reset button where in the middle of it, at the end of an interview, he'll kind of go back to the top and start over again, like somebody just drops a needle on a record. And it's really odd to watch. It's hard. You'd be hard pressed sitting next to a Trump fan to have them defend it to you if they had to watch it live. They can talk about it later, but watching it as it happens is a little uh-oh, right?
That's a different story than gaslighting later and saying, quit lying about it.
That's right, yeah. And saying it was cut out of context, or they're trying to make him look bad, or whatever. So in this particular case, Putin starts doing a little bit of that in his own kind of hard KGB, still got a vice grip on what little brains he has left at this thing. And they cut away to patriotic music in the middle of his speech. Just
for real?
That's it. Yeah, for real. Just cut. And then the next day, this dude is on television doing the 1974 Brezhnev has never been healthier stuff. And it's...
What happened to him?
Yeah, it's sketchy. Daphne says, I can't imagine how adores Johnny Million looks running in his competitions. Pure eye candy. Be still my heart. She gave a super chat. Thanks for that.
Daphne's doing stuff for my ego every single week.
Oh, sweet. and you deserve it, my friend. So I'm curious about this. Everybody's been talking about, and this, of course, there's a story in, a couple of people are running stories that, Lindsey Graham is endangering the United States by openly calling for the assassination of Vladimir Putin.
It's not diplomacy
as such.
as such.
I would also say it's super easy to be that kind of macho and call for that kind of violence when you're thousands of miles away. You know it's not your call, and you know what you're saying has no material effect on what's going on, right?
Yeah, that's how I am when I'm watching a football game.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody yells like, "Yeah, kill him!" And you're like, if I was down there, I'd be like, "Owie!" Right?
I'd be like,
yeah,
you almost hit me.
Meanwhile, reports come in that a second Kremlin spy chief has been put under house arrest, which of course means I guess he was led out into a field and detonated. I don't know what all the. I mean, it's nice to know as a comic who started my career when I was 14 in the 80s that a lot of these USSR jokes are being recycled. I've seen a bunch of people.
So crazy,
isn't it?
All coming back around.
That's right. So, this guy. It's Wall Street Journal's reporting that when Vladimir Putin planned to seize Kyiv in 2 days. Didn't happen. I wonder why. Bickering broke out between the FSB intelligence agency and the Russian Ministry of Defense. Bickering. That's not something, from strictly speaking, from a war position you need to you want happening around you. So apparently, the head of the FSB unit in charge of Ukraine, Colonel General. I just love that they have a Colonel General. Colonel General Sergei Beseda is apparently
name?
Colonel General. Yeah. Colonel General.
That's what you need to name your next cat, Colonel General.
That's a great idea. I'm for it.
Colonel General Sparks.
So, yes, Colonel General Sparks. Well, I technically am a colonel, so that works, right? I'm a Kentucky colonel. No, I'm a Kentucky colonel.
I thought you were a corn colonel. That would be more impressive.
Well, you know it. But this is sorry. I'm having to sign up to show you this ridiculous.
And I'm not helping by just.
No, you're not. You're distracting me while it happens.
I'm forcing him to riff against what he's doing.
Yes, exactly. So this story, this isn't the only place you'll find it, but this is not going according to plan. Jeffrey Edmonds, a former CIA and National Security Council official, said it's hard to imagine some senior intelligent person talking with Putin and not telling Putin what he wants to hear, especially if it is a belief that it is deeply held, like Putin's beliefs about Ukraine. Now, when it comes to this guy, it's also clear that the culture of someone is at fault and is going to pay is clearly still operative. So Putin is going to be like, he's got an off with his head kind of mentality about his own cabinet, right? And it is, people are noticing you have a spaceman above you. Yes, you do. These are.
I was wondering about that too. I'm pretty happy about it. All right, how do I look up at it? Let me see.
That is a graphic. Yeah, right. It just landed on your head. That graphic, by the way, for those that are wondering, is left over from a SpaceX joke in my live stream that I did a while back. Fine, I'll take him out. If you want him removed, I'll take him away. But I'd like him there. We like the astronaut there. So the FSB officer said to be under investigation and house arrest is Colonel General. Colonel General Sergei Beseda. Okay, pick one. I think that means kind of like maybe assistant general is how they're doing it, but they just don't like the sound of assistant, so I want to be a colonel general, right? It's also macho. Head of the intelligence agency's Fifth Service, obviously because the first four couldn't do it, also known as the Service for Operational Information and International Communications, or the BS czar, or the propaganda, the internal war propaganda ministry who they have so much propaganda. They have a guy who's in charge of BSing Putin personally. And the Journal is reporting that before adding adding that the Russian embassy had not responded on Friday when they were asked about the report. You don't say. Now, some people will recall. Oh, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Support the show and comment below. All that professional streamer stuff. Yeah. Now.
Does it matter that I can't hear Chicago, Hal?
Nope. I'm going to fix that in just a second.
Okay.
So I've got, that was one of the things that in coming up with a way for everybody to hear everything was, let's see. Because the monitor part on this will feed back like crazy. So,
this video is way better than when you do the Skype video.
Yes, it is. It's their own internal thing, so that helps a lot. Okay, so this is what I want. So I need to be able to send Google Chrome, and I need to be able to send this, and I need to be, I think that's it. Yes, it is. That's all. Okay, so set this down. We'll see if we can add this. Why is it not? Oh, terrible. That's Philip. Hold on. Philip's joining us. Hold on. Philip is in the green room. Hold on. And I'm going to bring him in, add to the list.
Hold on.
There you are. We hear you. It's okay. We hear you. You're good. We're good. We hear you. Let's see. Okay. We'll do this.
I want to turn off my...
Now the astronaut's perfect.
Yes. Oh, the astronaut's on Philip's head, so I got to move it. Hold on. It looks like it's landing on your dome there, Phil. Okay, excellent. We're coming back in.
Yay, you're moving it over.
Yes, I made it split that part of it, so hold on. And we're coming back from the break in a second.
Yep.
You're early, but that's totally fine.
No. Put me aside. I'm here.
Okay, let's see. Johnny to Google Chrome, Johnny on.
I can't see myself, Hal.
You shouldn't be able to unless you're on YouTube or something. So, fear not. Let's see. There. Thank you. And this guy. I know I'm only on one day a week. I get it. I'm going to have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the HAL Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the HAL Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good. Yes, it happens.
The HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Excellent. Yeah, it's gonna be good. Welcome, everybody. Philip is joining us a little bit live from Lviv. You're currently still there. Yes. And then Johnny Million is with us, dead center, and there's a astronaut floating between them. That's all that matters. And then I will try and over the course of this center you a little bit better, Phil. But there you are. And first of all, how you doing?
I've had better weeks, Hal.
Yeah.
I won't lie. Yeah. I can't see myself.
That's okay. You're fine. You're just fine.
You can see over my shoulder there. That's my buddy Pierre.
Mm-hmm.
And Pierre Zakrzewski was killed in a town outside of Kiev last Sunday, and he was a real good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And still processing that.
Yeah.
But Look, so anytime you hear people bitching about the mass media and those of us who are out here doing our job as best we can, tell that to the wife of my friend Pierre.
Right.
We're doing the best we can, given the constraints of what corporate media is. So,
well, curiously enough, well, let's start with the no. It's I completely get it.
No problem.
Because this is the reality that's going on there. I have had some rageful moments myself, as anybody who watches the live stream knows, about some of the more prominent non-corporate media people that you would say, specifically this week, Jimmy Dore and Russell Brand, who are doing everything in their power to excuse the actions of this. And so John Mersheimer is the father of the notion that this is the West's fault, that we drove Ukraine to this, that Putin had no other choice, and that he's sort of an innocent victim in this. And Mersheimer saying, I warned you guys about this a while back, because the warning ultimately was, don't push Putin, just let him have whatever he wants. Ukraine does not have the right to self-determination. Ukraine does not have the right to defend themselves, and they certainly don't have the right to join NATO. Now, I have covered multiple times, beyond all this nonsense, about the conversation in 1990 between Baker and Gorbachev about East Berlin and the non-movement into the rest of Germany.
Yeah, and the Budapest Agreement.
Right. And the predetermination, that they made as the USSR, that we weren't going to push NATO troops into the other part of Germany before German reunification. The USSR no longer exists, and I don't care. I don't think anybody has to care that the man running the place is a former KGB agent, and he thinks it still should. That's not my concern, nor it should be the concern of anyone in Ukraine. And in 1997, NATO and Russia signed an agreement, the foundation agreement, that said that every one of these countries, from Georgia, which they later invaded, and Ukraine, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, all these had the right to self-determination and the right to determine the best course of action for their own defense, whether that includes joining NATO or not. Period. End of story. A written, not a verbal agreement that they were yammering about maybe in a couple meetings, but a direct, on paper, treaty.
On paper agreement. And what Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all those numbnuts who advocate for, well, we have to understand what Moscow is saying. I mean, we have to understand their concerns. I mean, wouldn't you have those concerns? And look at what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis. They put missiles right on our doorstep, and we free. Yeah, okay, fine. All legit. Well, not legitimate, but oh yes, they do have those concerns. But here's the converse argument for that. So what? We're supposed to agree to 40 plus million people in Ukraine alone, much less the millions of people in the Baltic states or Georgia or Azerbaijan or Armenia or the Central Asian states?
Right.
Screw them.
Right.
Screw them. Screw that their interests are. Moscow wants its buffer zone.
Right.
So screw those people.
That's right.
That's what those people are advocating, and it's deplorable. Listen, HAL, I'm so glad that we have this opportunity weekly, and I know you were traveling this week, so we couldn't do what we kind of proposed at one point, kind of a midweek check-in. So I have a lot to kind of download here.
Catch us up.
Apologies. Rants are coming.
Understood.
Okay, so the argument is that screw these satellite states because Moscow's scared and we should just be at the whim of Moscow. We are at an inflection point, and I want all of your audience to hear what I'm saying here. We are basically at a point where we have to decide whether or not what Russia sees the world as is the way the world should operate, or the way that Western democracies believe the world should work at. And it really, the problem is that Russia has a damn darn good argument in that the rule of law is often broken on a global stage. But you look at yourself, Russia, before they know us very well, and they attack us with the clubs that they know we will most be vulnerable to. And so they say, you know, you Americans, you adhere to an ideal of a rule of law, but you break it all the time. And yet at home, they don't have the rule of law themselves, so they know what they're doing. I have posted many times in the last week, Hal, and I think I sent directly to you a quote by Abraham Lincoln. And I think I even mentioned it in last week's discussion, was that Lincoln said, look, we're full of hypocrites. We say that we believe in the rule of law, and yet at the same time we betray our ideals of, you know, we take as a truth these inalienable rights that we're given. And if we're not going to at least aspire to that, then screw it. Let's just be Russia and just not even have a pretext for the idea of.
I will say, in reference to that, that was meant as
a. Sorry.
Yes,
yours,
that's okay.
Clear.
The Abe Lincoln quote, which makes its way around, especially these days, and Russia and other countries are fond of kind of bringing that one up when it floats, is based on a verbal irony. It was meant to be provocative to the very people that were trying to divide the country. If you don't want freedom for everybody, why don't you just finally admit that that's what you want? It was meant to be it wasn't him arguing his real beliefs. It was him telling the Confederacy, what are you really arguing for? You're arguing for the reinstatement of a monarchy, effectively, where there are magic families and special people. And it was not meant as an earnest statement. We have to take a break. When we come back, Philip will have yet another rant, I have no doubt. But then on top of that, that statement was also made when Lincoln was in the process of moving this country forward towards its values in an exponential way, in a way that caused the death of hundreds of thousands of Americans in the process, and yet was viewed as a price worth paying. That is wholly different than Ukraine and Russia are one people, and basically us taking their land. They don't deserve the right to their own government. We'll be back.
Sorry.
No apologies.
Fear not. Yeah. Give me
More real, please. More real.
I'm going to try and switch this to my headphones, so it's a little bit more.
You turned sideways on us. He's gone obtuse. You're in an obtuse angle. Hold on. His camera kind of went and.
Sorry. I'm coming right back. Hold on.
That's okay.
There we go.
Hold on one second.
Hey, Hal, I just also have to say once again how much I appreciate you letting me on your air.
Yeah. Glad to do it, man. Absolutely.
Letting you.
Hey, we're having you. We're glad to have you. Yep.
I think I've got it. Oh, shoot. How far are we?
We're fine. Don't worry. And we can still hear you. So it's, remember, this is the show that's radio. And besides, it almost makes sense that you're sideways with Johnny. Almost. There he is. There you go. You go back.
There we go.
Fantastic.
Okay. Now we're all good.
Mm-hmm.
I get revved up. It's been an emotional week. I mean, I can't.
Of
he's
course.
gone again.
Yeah.
Can't see my buddy Pierre, but that was a hell of a blow.
You mean war and mortality actually upset you, Phil?
Right. And again, I spent the better part of the last couple of days at doing my stream at an odd time, obviously. And are we? Let's see. Chicago, we good? Just making sure.
Yeah, we're back in 20 seconds. Or I'm sorry, 30 seconds.
Okay, cool.
Can Phil hear me?
Yeah. Phil, can you hear Johnny? Okay, you should be able to.
I think I can.
Yep.
Johnny?
Hey, check 1, 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in between us, it should all be the same.
I hear you faintly. I think I hear it actually off of your speaker, Al.
10 seconds.
I think I'm hearing Johnny off of your speaker.
Nope, because I have. Oh, thank you. I have headphones in, so he's actually. Oh, you went sideways again. There you go.
Okay. Well, I'm hearing him somehow.
I know I'm only on 1 day a week. I get it. I'm gonna have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the HAL Sparks Show. Wow. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the HAL Sparks Show. Wow. And then a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
The HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. Welcome back. Philip Bittner is joining us. Philip, are you still with us? Can we hear you?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can't. Your camera's on frozen again, but that's just part of where we are.
Philip. Fix that.
Okay, Philip is with us live from Lviv in Ukraine, and has been gentleman enough to join us in the middle of that. Obviously, there's the broader geopolitical stuff, and then there's the stuff that's happening straight on the ground. Oh, he hung up and called back. Excellent. Okay, we'll call him back. We'll take this guy out. And there he is. Okay, good. You're back.
Okay. Sorry, I heard you.
That's okay. So in this, let's start with the material time on the ground. What's going on in Lviv right now? Because the Russian column has been stalled going into Kiev for, the entire time, for 3 weeks now. This was, can you imagine something that is, they've been 40 miles away from a place for, the better part of these last 2.5 weeks, which is incredible considering the size of the alleged size of the Russian force, which is another conversation entirely, and what the Ukrainians are fighting with, and the fact that they're dealing with this on the ground. So I know they're evacuating people right now, and I also know that that's part of Russia's plan, because what you can do with this kind of strafe bombing is you can drive people out. You can make people, if you can. Effectively, there's genocide for wiping out a group of people, and then you can also evacuate them from the area, claim the ground because the people are no longer there. I don't think that's going to work in this idea, and most of the people that are leaving are women, children, and the elderly, people who aren't fighting age, aren't fighting size, aren't being able to contribute in the battles themselves. So they're not planning to leave forever. They're planning on coming back as soon as this is over. So it's different than what I think Ukraine expected. Beg your pardon. What Russia expected when they went in Georgia.
Well, Al, this goes back to a very fundamental principle about what's happening here, is that they don't think this is a country. They don't recognize the Russian. They really don't. They don't recognize Ukraine as a sovereign state. They think that they are and they do this with so many of their different satellite states. The Serbs seem to actually appreciate it and benefit from it because, of course, the Balkans is a different situation. But, the Serbs are a perfect example of how a kind of a subservient Slavic nation. It wasn't always like that under Tito, but, they have gotten to a point where they are actually perfectly happy to have Russia as their big brother. The Ukrainians, by contrast, from a long time ago and with a very different history than Serbia, have gotten to a point where they're, this is going, I was researching this earlier today, getting deeper and deeper into the Ukrainian independence movement that's been happening since literally the 1600s. And whether they were fighting the Poles or the Russians or the Germans or whatever, this ground has always been contested by bigger powers, except for the actual people who live here.
Right.
So I am getting this stuff from people who are saying, "Oh, you're so brave," or "You're so the information you're giving is so important." I feel extremely privileged. I am witnessing the birth of a nation. And if you as an American do not see how freaking amazing that is, that they are fighting against powers that have been bigger than them for centuries. This land has been overrun by powers bigger than them for the last 400 years at least. And they are finally coming to a place where they're going to say, no, we're a country, we have borders, we have a national identity, this is who we are. There's a rule of law on the global stage, and we will fight and we will die for it. And my God, it's inspiring.
Yeah.
I'm not scared at all. I get air raid sirens every couple of hours. I would not be terribly surprised if I hear one while we're talking.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we were struck outside, about 4 miles from where I am, was hit by a multitude of ordnance coming from the Russians in the Black Sea Fleet. They hit an airfield, an air
strip,
repair site. And, there is still a sense, though, here that they can hit us with whatever they want to hit us with. We're going to be a state. We're going to be a nation. And to me, that's incredibly inspiring. I find it an incredible privilege to be here.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the mistakes, the biggest mistakes, and that might be why. I hope you're all right there, Phil.
I get on a rant, my throat gets dry.
I understand. No. So we got these reports that Russia has pulled back two of their put under house arrest two of their intelligence officers, and largely because apparently they were telling Putin that this was going to be easy, that the Ukrainian people were going to like this, in the same way that they were more than likely telling him this stuff that he was believing about Crimea and Donbass, which is, the people there love us being there. They would rather be with us, even though what he's talking about is the people that they put there, the people that they sent in, because they've been brooming Ukrainians out of those areas over the last 10 years. That's been the process. And then they've been trying to, add more people from Russia into the extended areas. The problem is they haven't spent the time making their lives better. They're basically just there to absorb, missile fire or gunshots and throw themselves in front of this so that Russia can go, look how terribly they're being treated. So it looks like, it seems to me anyways, that the story that got back to Vladimir Putin was that the Donbass and Crimea is full of people who wish Ukraine was part of Russia, and the rest of Ukraine feels this way too. It's just this government and the West that's BS them into thinking that they can survive on their own without me. And it's like
that performance today. That performance today says it all. I mean, if that was not a Nazi rally style event, then I don't know what was.
Yeah, it was like white nationalist Olympics. It was like the flags and all that kind of stuff. And yet at the same time, they had to oblige a lot of people to go. There were a lot of people who were talking to reporters there who didn't want to show their faces and say who they were or where they were from, because they were afraid that what they said would get back to Putin and them. But they were literally like talking to reporters while putting their hands over their face and going, "I don't support this war." So you can't even see their mouths moving. And, again, huge kudos to the Russian people that are protesting this because of what happens to you when you're protesting. And in contrast to these idiot truckers who think a blockade is a protest and think that they can, mess around or say that that Justin Trudeau is acting in a tyrannical way and that is in any way comparable to what Vladimir Putin is doing. So here's, the story apparently that he was told was that that the Ukrainians didn't really want sovereignty, didn't believe in this, and that it was being forced on them. Almost like into the beliefs around Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places, that the West is trying to force democracy on places that are culturally incapable or unwilling to do so.
It's the cynicism of the Russian system. Okay, I go back to this. I go back to this point that I keep making, but it really is like there is a worldview that is being put forward by Vladimir Putin and his regime that stop pretending that there is such a thing as individual motivation or individual destiny, or that there are people who actually want to control their own future. You are all pawns. You are all it. I've been thinking about so much of what I wanted to say today, and I one of the things that I wanted to make a point of is that there's remember how last week I said that one of my fundamental when I consider the differences between America and Russia, how we're kind of a dark mirror to one another. Right. And how they fought their way out of nature and we fought our way into it. We look at the world in an optimistic view and they look at the world as the wolf is at the door. There's another fundamental difference between Russia and America, and that is this. We believe in the idea that we are born with certain inalienable rights. Right. That could not be farther than what the Russian perspective is on what it is to be human, and they don't believe in inalienable rights. They believe in the idea that you are born naked into this world and you gotta fight every single day to earn whatever right you're going to get. It's good. It's because you fight like a demon. And if you really want to have power, you have to take power from somebody else. It's a zero-sum equation. That's the perspective on power. And that is why also there is a massive, there's this huge populace in Russia, which is there's no middle class, because basically the idea is if you want rights, you fight for them and you earn them. Yes. Whereas Americans and in Western society, we go from a baseline of you're born with these rights and that's given to you, and then we move from there. And the problem is, I don't know who's right or who's wrong. But as an American, I tend to lean on the fact, on the idea of, I'll tell you what, we have to take rights. We have rights. I will have to agree on that, and we move forward from there.
Right. We got to take a break. When we come back, I'll tell you exactly who's right. I promise. How do you like that for? How do you like that for a bumper? Agree with you, I bet. That's I don't doubt it. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, with now with 100% more Johnny Million and Philip Ittner joining us from Lviv. We'll be back right after this.
Go darn it! I went on a rant again.
Don't worry about it. It's all right.
I'm pent up.
I understand. We get it. I get these. Johnny knows these very well, because there's certain times when I get infuriated about some of this stuff, and there's just I've rolled past breaks in my life like nobody's business. Not at all.
I should be more professional. And I guess at some point I should explain, this is a vyshyvanka.
A vyshyvanka?
I'm wearing this is traditional Ukrainian clothing.
Nice. As you should. Absolutely. And with and a nice one. And not just because it's the only thing clean. I can't imagine what normal services are like in that circumstance right now. Like when you start, I do in some situations, having been on, extended camping in my life where I've lived for months, weeks on end in Friendship, Indiana, in a teepee. So you get this idea that like every little scrap of civilization.
How much of a mess can you see behind me? I can't tell because I'm only a third of the frame in what I'm watching.
No, yes, exactly. I'm keeping it relatively tight around you for your own protection and your own respect level. You can have as much of a mess as you need. It's completely forgiven. It's all all I see is you and ceiling. You're fine. So Johnny, on the other hand,
beard.
Yes, that's right. We're all very proud of your chin locks.
Chin locks.
Oh, good Lord. There's so much to...
what do you want to talk about next? I mean, there's so much.
Yes, I know. I want to talk about, part of it is you don't want to talk about some of it, but my own feelings about what they're seeing as far as what Putin is saying there. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Saturdays at 6 p.m.
If you want to touch on the denazification thing, I have a couple of ideas on that. But maybe
there's going to be like one new one every break. I was so excited.
You want more, Hal? We'll give you more. HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. Hoo-yah!
Welcome back to the show. Philip Ittner is still with us from Lviv, and we're so glad that he is. Johnny Million is fresh from a half marathon, which is a whole marathon that he does on one leg. And I'm at... seriously. And he just did a half marathon.
As we say in this part of the world, Molodets.
Molodets. Yeah.
You're welcome.
And I'm in Kentucky on my kids' spring break, spending it with the grandparents, because my father, being a hypochondriac, is always believing he's not long for this world and wants to see more of his grandkid. And so that's what you do.
Aww.
You just do it. So here we are, and it's lovely. And here's the question we went to before was, the Russians believe that you don't have any inborn rights. You have to fight for every scrap you get in life. And the Americans believe we are born with these inalienable rights, and they are, the gift of God to every person. This is the essential premise of the Constitution, for example. Now, people will forget that those inalienable rights were the root purpose of the fighting. That these are mine already, these are yours already, and we are fighting together. Whether we agree on a bunch of stuff or not, you have the right to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to congregate, all the elements of that we appreciate in the Constitution are what the Revolutionary War was fought for. We Americans believe that fighting was necessary as well. We just did it a long time ago and then continued to build a system on top of it. The Russians have been dealing their entire lives with three versions of dictatorships. The USSR as a communist state is nonsense. It was always a dictatorship. It was, socialism is a functioning, governmental system that was eventually supposed to lead them to full communism. But the dictators in charge never really wanted that, nor would they. And that's one of the reasons why communism is a non-starter, is because every leader who's on their way there gets to a really sweet spot where they control everything and never want to give it up, which is essentially how you get monarchs. And so they went from the czars to the USSR to Vladimir Putin, with a mild break of Gorbachev in between that was pretty sweet in terms of the sales of rock and roll music and jeans in the country. Yeltsin a bit too, yes. And in that period, they had an 8-year period where they could kind of balance that idea that, maybe we could start this up, and then it got squashed. Just like democracy gets squashed by authoritarians and dictators throughout history when it starts to gain ground. The United States was the biggest gaining of ground of democracy in world history, and was the seed point for other democracies. Ukraine was in a similar situation. Russia tried the exact same thing with them, with Yanukovych effectively, we'll let you exist, but you're really a sock puppet for us. Poroshenko was a bridge to Zelensky, and Zelensky's their first legitimate leader. And in the same way that America had 9 presidents before George Washington. I don't know if Peyton Randolph was the first president of the United States, but not under the Constitution. George Washington was the first president of the United States under the U.S. Constitution. We had 9 presiding presidents before that.
Right.
Peyton Randolph was
And
the
a
first guy to...
constitution before the one we ratified
Exactly.
in 1789.
That's right. That period lasted for years and it had a lot of King George's agents and other people trying to undermine it. They had people that were, leaned towards the crown, and people who were fully wanting to be with the crown, and people who fully wanted to be revolutionaries, and there was a batch back and forth. And so we had in the United States in 1772 on, we had our Yanukovych to Poroshenko to Zelensky moment. Yeah. We had it.
Right.
And we did. And once we put that fight in the rearview mirror, we in a lot of ways, even as rough as it's been in patches, have effectively just marched up that hill towards bettering our democracy ever since. Shedding monarchy, shedding slavery, shedding all the old world stuff that was part of this. And what you're seeing in many ways in Ukraine, and this is, is you're seeing that in a shorter time. In the same way that women's suffrage in the world took hundreds of years and gay rights truncated to a much shorter amount of time because of modern life and the ability towards messaging and all the other accoutrements that come with it. Ukraine is benefiting from the same level. A more intense war, a more intense propaganda fight, a more intense messaging fight worldwide, yes, and more worldwide attention because of communication, just because of satellites.
But
in a way,
also,
yeah.
But also how there's a couple of things that are happening here that are actually unique for this particular part of the world.
Sure.
Is that they have been fighting for centuries for actually an ideal that is very similar to what the ideals that we eventually, and when we talk about what eventually became the United States and the prior presidents and the governance of what was colonial America, which actually did become, a viable society independent of itself, and which ultimately led to the revolution that in 1776, and then of course the creation of the modern United States of America from our founding fathers. This plot of land in Europe has actually been a place of representational democracy since the 1400s, 1500s, and which actually eventually did become, the Cossacks. There's an entirely, it's like what the Scots are to the Brits. There is a sub-nation within this stretch of land of the Cossacks, and the hegemite of the Don Cossacks in particular, where they actually did have not a representative democracy. They had a full-fledged democracy, which is why it was so darn chaotic, is because everybody had a vote. Every single member of the Cossack clans had a vote. And they would hold these massive, of course, back in those days, the population was smaller, but still, they had direct democracy as opposed to representative democracy.
And it got
so revolutionary that the Poles and the Russians equally decided that they wanted to crush these people.
Right. My point exactly. Like it would start flourishing, and then it would get knocked down. It would get flourishing and knocked down. And one of the reasons why it survived in the United States was why the United States survived as it did was because of its isolation geographically while it got to grow. It got the space away from it instead of being punching distance from the nearest psychopath. And currently the opposite is now becoming true, in that dictatorships are now in punching distance from a multitude of democracies that are thriving and creating opportunities for themselves that have nothing to do with geopolitical war. That the world effectively over time is trying to shake off the old world resource wars that defined both borders and movements of peoples over centuries. And everybody's like, no, these are our lines now. We're okay with that. And we'll just build what we build culturally within those things and see what we can contribute to the world. Instead of, I'm born on the gold, you're born on the oil, they have the arable land, let's fight. And that's still the mentality of Russia and China largely. Except they have no arable land, and we don't care about the oil and coal as much as we used to. And that's going to just increase over the next 2 decades as much as they try to fight it. So Ukraine,
and for the first time, for the first time since the 17th century, these people actually have a functioning state with borders, and they're not going to give it up. Not this time.
So I'm curious. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a reality where Crimea and Donbass end up back in Ukrainian hands after all this.
If you'd have said that to me 8 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. But I actually think they might get momentum so much that they might actually be able to. Crimea is going to be difficult. And we've discussed that because it is a very serious loss for the Russians. And that's going to be a tough fight to try and get back Crimea.
But it's also a small price to pay for your entire economy coming back.
How close are you to break?
We've got 2 minutes.
Oh, you got 2 minutes? That's plenty of time. Okay. You can let me go. Here I go. Okay, so Crimea, we've talked about it. It's an existential threat because that's where Russia has its Black Sea Fleet. Black Sea Fleet is the only fleet of 4 fleets, and we've discussed that, the fact that the Russia's Navy is too big for itself and for its purposes currently, although I have argued with you, Hal, that once the Northeast Passage thaws and there's a functioning trade route over the Arctic, and Russia will control that, and it will make the Panama Canal look like a Korean bodega. And I argue that they do need a good navy, and that's an existential threat for them. But they need to have a special status for Sevastopol, and I think we are misreading these arguments that are coming out of the negotiations for peace, that there is a special status agreement being determined for Ukraine. Some people have speculated that it's kind of like an Austria situation where they're part of the EU but not part of NATO. I think there's a possibility that actually that the communications that are coming out of both Russia and Ukraine when it comes to a special status agreement would be over Crimea. The Ukrainians are not, the Ukrainian government is not delusional. They understand that for Russia, Sevastopol is an existential threat. Many Ukrainians will tell you they want Crimea back for a variety of reasons, not least of which because of the Tatar community that is there. But ultimately, I don't think that's not the hill that Ukraine is willing to die on.
I agree. I don't think
get their independence with a special status for the Black Sea Fleet. If they're smart, and I bet they are, and in fact I know they are because I know several of them, they will begrudgingly do it.
Right. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. More from Phil and Lviv. Yep, exactly. Well done. We'll be back right after this with more of your comments also in the chat. If anybody has a question for Phil, Johnny will gladly keep track of those and feed them to him. We'll be back right after this. Yep. Oh, an earthquake in California. Like, what was it, a 3? Good Lord.
A 3?
I'm kidding.
I'm from San Francisco, please.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Can I fix my shot? Do you want me to fix my shot?
I did it.
Compared to the two of you, my face is enormous.
Well, that's because I moved you around is all. I just, yeah.
If I clean up my, Yeah,
here you go. Here you go. I just moved you.
Oh, okay, that's better.
Yeah, it's the only way I can move you up in the frame is all. If you could,
okay.
Yep. So fear not.
We still have to have our offline conversation, Hal.
Absolutely.
How's Kentucky been? How's been going back to the family?
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Be happy. We'll talk about it offline, but be happy that your family is healthy and happy.
Oh, I always am.
Gone through some rough patches in the last few years. So
my dad's dialysis setup is on the other side of my green screen right here. So we deal with that stuff all the time. And yeah.
Well, I don't deal with it anymore, but
right.
You get my point.
We'll
We'll talk about it offline.
Yep.
And when this is over, I'm coming to LA.
I insist. Whoops, hold on.
I'm staying here as long as I can, though.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It literally is. It literally, I know it sounds like, I'm going to sound like an egomaniac here, but I do feel like Lafayette. I am like watching the birth of a nation. And it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was this is significant. Let's see. Two stronger, let's see. Oh, that's the Japanese ones. That doesn't count. Yeah,
three?
No, I was joking. I haven't seen the California one. They haven't. Nobody's saying what it is, how much it is yet.
I'm starting to get some traction, by the way, Hal. I'm
good.
Your fans are amazing. They're trying to spread out so that
yes,
people,
they are.
That's right. I really appreciate it.
I want to get your opinion on the Putin parade. His party, his big and the fact that.
Oh, hey! If we get a second, I also want to talk about the fact that there isn't an NCO class, and the reason why Russia's military is actually so weak in leadership is because they don't want to foster strong, capable military leaders
to take him out.
That is a challenge to their political control.
Well, and also, strategically, why would you want somebody who knows more about, the chess match of murder, death, and assassination around you when you're Vladimir Putin? Yeah.
They killed a guy If we have time to talk about it, I'd love to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the rah shishkumba Russia performance was just surreal. So
there's another. Let's see. Alexander Sherba he has these Russian army intercepts that they just got. Have you taken that city? Nah, Commander.
The fuck out?
It just says, have you taken that? Right. Have you taken the city? Nah, Commander refused to send us to that slaughter. So what do? Loot around. It's allowed now. That's the statement. Yeah. That's the piece of the recording. By the way, they've lost 4 generals so far.
I heard as high as 6.
Well, 4 that they've confirmed.
I talked to a buddy. Well, I should save this for on the air. But I talked to a buddy of mine who was actually in the Soviet and then subsequently in the Russian military. He was I'll save it for air.
Okay.
Should I cover up my picture? Is it too much?
No, you're fine. It's totally good.
Okay.
No, we don't worry about that here. Okay, so let's see. Sherba posts a lot of stuff directly from the sites, including we're going to start back.
I got a guy who I might be able to link you in with, but I want to get into the approval first.
Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at HALSparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the show. So Philip is still with us in Lviv. Johnny Million's looking at our chat right now, and he'll have questions for Philip from our chat room at infotainmentwars.com. That's the YouTube channel if you want to link in there. Now, one of the most amazing things, and in saying you feel like Lafayette being around Philip during this and being on the ground there, which it's extraordinary, is seeing lately especially the footage of Zelensky going outside in the street and going to hospitals and that kind of stuff, while that there have been 3 specific hit squads out that failed, by the way, that they themselves were unable to get inside, and every day he's in mortal danger. There's no question that at any time they could, do something really awful, and we wouldn't put any of that past Putin at this point. But it's that's another extraordinary point in this, is that you do have a proud leader who's doing this, and it almost seems like Putin is answering this by trying to put on a good show with his statements on the air, and then that rally. Did you watch that?
He's not good at it.
No,
he's not good at it.
No, he's not a charismatic leader.
Terrible at it.
So you saw the Putin "Yay, we're bombing Ukraine" rally, which was it looked like the Nazi Olympics. It looked like it was halfway between this, it's like, how do we do a big genocidal rally that you could also have a soft drink sponsor? You know what I mean? Visually, that's what it looked like, and yet, yeah.
And it was filled with flaws and technical difficulties. Mm-hmm. And then also what was as bad as Putin's performance was, and he is really bad at that. Mm-hmm. He always has been. If you go past, there are certain situations where he's actually really good and the camera loves him. When he is in a room with his cabinet and he's dressing them down, mm-hmm. the Russian public eats that up. It's just red meat, because there he is, he's cracking heads. But if he gives, my God, did you ever see him play I Found My Thrills on Blueberry Hills?
Oh yeah, right. When he sings or tries to be personable. Yeah, he's not good at the baby kissing stuff.
Are you?
Right.
My God, man.
I've got a few questions from the chat if anyone wants them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, but let me finish Johnny. Let me just quickly finish my thought. There are also a number of speakers that led up to Putin, and that actually isn't very funny. It's scary because those guys were talking about stuff that was really like, we are on a God mission. We are a different, unique people, and we will fight against the lies of the West, and we are with God, and we will reconquer these worlds, these countries, and these lands where the Western corrupt, almost capitalist. Mm-hmm. It was almost like Soviet stuff,
right?
It was like where there's a ruling elite that dominates and blah 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 blah. Look, it's now getting into propaganda and a world think and a group think, and it's going to get to a point, I fear, where we're going to have to maybe consider that, because of the brainwashing that's been going on in Russia, that as much as I hate to say it, that we are not just against Putin, we're against the Russian people, because the Russian people have been the victim of a brainwashing that gives support to Vladimir Putin.
Right, but that's at least a battle you fight.
Hopefully that fever breaks.
Right,
hopefully that fever breaks.
But and that is that's a different battle than you fight. System. Right, that's a different battle, and you fight that again with messaging and the like. I don't know if you saw Schwarzenegger's message this week, but it got passed. It was amazing, right. And there's no way that doesn't get through. No, so Johnny has some questions, and I want to get to those in a second.
I apologize that I don't have the people who asked them, but the first question I've got here is: will the Ukraine eventually surrender? Is the end?
It's not the Ukraine, it's Ukraine. The Ukraine is what Russians call it. Ukraine. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, before I answer that, because I have a very simple answer to that, is no. So actually, you know what? I answered the question. There it is. No. No frickin' way.
Yeah, they're not surrendering.
This country will never surrender.
Right.
Never.
Right.
I'm here now, and I'll tell you, they will never surrender. But secondly, when we talk about these phonetic arguments of or these language arguments of is it Ukraine or is it the Ukraine? You're absolutely right. It should be Ukraine. It is it's
a country, not a territory.
Is Ukraine on the border? So it is a country. But secondly, I'm sick and tired of hearing everybody pander to the idea that you don't want to call this capital of this country Kiev.
Okay.
I agree. It should not be Kiev, but it is also not Kyiv.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. It is, and unless you are a Slavic language speaker, it's very subtle, but the difference is this. It's Kiev.
Kiev.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. because there are two different alphabets happening here. There's the Ukrainian alphabet and there's the Russian alphabet. And in the Russian alphabet, there is a word "yeah." So they get upset when you say it from a transliteration from Russian to Kiev, as opposed to Kiev, which is because there's the replacement in the Ukrainian alphabet is a double I as opposed to the backwards R, which is Ya in Russian. So class is done, students.
Right. Yes. Well, I would also.
Sorry,
I made this.
Sorry,
No.
You brought it up. You brought it up. The difference between the Ukraine and Ukraine. So I just had to make because every time I hear Western media going Kyiv because they're overcompensating, it drives me freaking nuts.
Well, again, this is one of those situations where whether you call it Kyiv or Kiev, people know what you're talking about, even there. And, they do the same thing with like Spanish pronunciation and names, but they don't do Italian for some reason, which is odd. So I don't know why you wouldn't go Mario Angelati when you're, pronouncing a Spanish name as if you're...
Did my family come from Munich or did it come from München? I don't know.
Right, exactly. But they never do Chinese names, which actually change meaning based on the tones. You can actually change someone's name by how you say it. So they don't do it with the tonal languages. Yeah, exactly. They only do it in style. So Johnny has some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. So another person asked, with the bomb so close to Poland, what could potentially happen there?
It's a good question, and I've had that question asked me in the last 36 hours because of what happened north of us. Right now, they're hitting what they aim at because they're using long-range weaponry, which has the danger of if you even change it by just a grade or two could mean miles and miles off. So you want to be very precise when you're using long-range weaponry, and even the Russians understand that. So they were launching stuff out of the Black Sea, whether or not it was a submarine or it was a surface vessel that shot off a cruise missile. They hit what they intended to hit, as is the same with the foreign training ground 30 miles west of us here. What was that? Of 4 or 5 days ago. Yakovlev, if I'm remembering correctly. So at this point, because they're using long-range weaponry, it is still pretty precise because of the great distance you want to hit what you're aiming at, and they have been. What concerns me is if they actually move military units closer to here, and you can use medium-range fire, and that, especially with Russian military doctrine, is basically you blanket a stretch of territory with munitions and just blow the crap
out of it.
Can I say crap?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
You blow the crap out of it. So look at what's happening in Mariupol. Look at what's happening in Kiev. Look what's happening in Kharkiv. This is Russian military doctrine. Blow the crap out of everything that you are close to. You get your infantry right up to the point where once you've destroyed the position that you're trying to destroy, you send in the cannon fodder, and your soldiers go in there because you got plenty of them, and they sweep the place. So I fear that's what's going to happen in Kiev, but here in Lviv, probably not, because we'll see their actual troop movements getting much closer to you before they can use medium-range weaponry.
Well, and also, you have a different fight that goes on in a place where you want to keep most of the infrastructure than places you don't. So if you're fighting in Afghanistan, it's a zero-sum game as far as the Russian military was concerned. If they just destroyed every single building in the whole country, fine. They didn't care. Yeah. It's different in Ukraine because of not just the need for it later, but because of the messaging of it ultimately, that they do end up losing their own propaganda war if they level entire sections of apartment blocks and that kind of stuff.
They can destroy Kharkiv. They can destroy Kharkiv. They can destroy the suburban areas around Kiev. They can't destroy St. Sofievsky cathedral in Kiev, or they can't destroy the opera house in Lviv without UNESCO and the entire world saying you're destroying world heritage.
Right, exactly. And the argument is you're destroying your own, right? That's the other thing, that they lose their own fight in this. And that is a difference between...
Which is why I feel relatively safe here. It's why I chose this location, because I wanted to have the dateline of being in Ukraine. And make no mistake about it, I mean, I'm at risk. But I am nowhere near as at risk as my colleagues who are in eastern locations from me. I'm not, that's not what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, James, for the super chat, by the way. He says we can rebuild Ukraine with all the frozen assets, Putin and his associates, including Chelsea FC.
Don't think the Ukrainians haven't said that to me.
Yeah, exactly. And there, he's got kind of borderline enough to do it. He's worth $200 million. You could freeze those assets and distribute them to, that's a lot of apartment blocks in an Eastern European country. I'm just saying, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Let's not forget, on our way out in 1997, when Boris Yeltsin said, we are coming close to creating a new and big Europe without dividing lines, a Europe where no country would dictate its will to others. That was after that whole stupid, you won't move an inch further thing in Germany that was said in conversation. That was part of the written agreement. We'll be back.
I hope you're still enjoying this, Hal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
still got some more questions.
Yep. We'll pick those up.
I got on a rant. I'm pent up, so I got on.
Oh, it's all right. Bound to happen.
How dare you keep talking when we ask you questions?
And have you been out to the wreckage at all? Have you been out to sites that have been hit?
No, not yet.
Okay, I think that's wise.
I'm right now. I'm considering myself a different kind of beast. I want to have the dateline and say I'm here, so that I get an ear that'll listen to me.
Sure.
And I've done wars for 20 years, and I'm not news gathering. I'm bearing witness.
Yeah, right. Both
it might come to it. And also there are people who need the body armor. I didn't have it when I came to Ukraine on this. When this happened, I came here from San Francisco. I have lived in London for the last 20 years, and everything that I own that is really relevant to what I do is actually the storage unit in London. And I wasn't able to transit through London, get my body armor and some of my better equipment and things like that. Didn't have a chance. I flew directly from San Francisco to Warsaw, and then went to Krakow, and then came across the border. So I didn't have a chance to go get my stuff.
Hold on. Over the, we were just talking with Philip during the break about, the sort of the purpose of being there and bearing witness to all this, and largely, I'm sure I'm not the only one who has questions, but I'm going to defer to our chat right now, who has some questions. Johnny, what are the questions they have for Philip while he's there?
One thing, but before I rattle off another question, I did have a general one. Would you be willing, Phil, to answer questions like this on Twitter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you guys want to,
right, so if you don't,
I'm here for one reason only, and that's to get the word out.
Yeah. So I'm going to change your name on there,
Philip. His name to
this is to your Twitter handle is now up underneath you.
So here's another one, and this one
I'll do the best I can. I'll do the best I can. I'm second guessing myself. I'll do the best I can.
Of course,
yes,
right.
Please.
Do you know, Phil, how many Russian generals have died in Ukraine, and who is killing them?
I've heard as high as 6. And but I think also it plays back to this idea that the Russian military does not like to foster independently capable officers. They don't have an NCO class, and they don't like it when their generals get too capable, because then they pose a political threat. I mean, you look at the general who darn it. The head of the Russian military during the Second World War, who of course, riding on the horse outside of Red Square. Come on, Phil. Anyhow, they get too big for their britches,
right.
and they Zhukov. Oh boy, that was terrible.
Okay.
They get too big for their britches, and the political powers get nervous, and so they don't like to see an officer class that gets too ahead of itself. Mm-hmm. So it's been really interesting during this war, because I've also been talking to a dear friend of mine that I've known for many, many years, and he was actually a soldier in the Soviet Union. He was a conscript in the Soviet Union, and then eventually, when the transition happened to the Russian Federation, he stayed within the military as a conscript. And then when he left, he went down and fought in Nagorno-Karabakh. Mm-hmm. He was a journalist, a war correspondent in Nagorno-Karabakh, and he told me, we were talking earlier this week, he said, look, this has been a real serious problem in Russian military doctrine. They don't like to have a functioning officer class, nor do they want an NCO class.
It's competition.
Then, yeah, exactly. So what they love to have is a whole bunch of conscripts and a bunch of generals who are little more than apparatchiks and who are technically good at what they do, but they don't want them to be really good in performance, because then the spotlight will be on them and the political leadership will feel threatened from them. So you don't want a star. So, and what is amazing is that we have been training the Ukrainians for the last 8 years, and we have completely restructured their military.
Yes.
So they do have a really strong non-commissioned officer class, and that's why these people are kicking the out of the Russians, because they're all independent soldiers with a command structure that allows for small unit activity.
Right.
And that is not what the Russians do. And so you can have a small unit of 16 men who have in-laws or javelins or, whatever, they can do serious damage to these Russians who are just massive because of their structure. And the Russian military doctrine has been completely revealed to be not effective in 21st century warfare.
It is the modern equivalent of the redcoat strategy in the American Revolutionary War, facing what would be the Kentucky Bluegrass Militia. I was a kid.
Oh my God! How?
Yeah.
Come on.
Right. When I was 7 years old, I marched in this Kentucky parade that we have in Frankfurt every year, and our group took part in a reenactment of the Battle of Richmond, which was won by the Kentucky militia coming in at the last moment and fighting from the trees against the overwhelming size of the military there, with guys carrying in stacks of muzzleloaders and firing one after the other as a kid reloaded right next to him, with a 9-year-old child loading guns next to their dad laying on a hill, firing 6 guns in a row, because that's how slow the guns operated back then. And that was the deciding factor in the Battle of Richmond. And this is very similar to that regard, in that these giant convoys are coming in. And one of the people that you're talking about, this is General Andrei Mordachev, died in Ukraine. He's the most recent one that they've at least listed. And he's
a paratrooper?
Yeah, huge decorated dude, older guy. But I also believe, and there's every reason to think this is how it's working out, is that Putin, in regard to this kind of ego and not wanting competition, if there's any of these generals that he's got any worries about, he's pushing him to the front of the line. He's, this Hitler did this, Napoleon did this, Stalin did this, Mao did this to some degree. That you have somebody that's edging for your job, and you just put them in a very dangerous position, and that seems
maybe. I'll interject in there, in that the sense that you're giving Putin more responsibility of the structure of the Russian military than I think he deserves. I think Putin has been sold a Potemkin village by the Russian military for the last decade at least, if not longer. I look back on all of these videos that I used to monitor when I was working for broadcast for Sky News or for CBS or whatever. Part of my job was to monitor these video feeds that would come in from various countries around the world, and they would give them to the Associated Press, APTN, or Reuters, and they would feed that out in a bulk feed. And you would occasionally see these things that Putin would go to, where he would test the latest Kalashnikov, or he would get a display of the effectiveness of their new Armada tank, which was so technologically advanced that it could beat any Western tank.
Right.
But the problem was that you had a very small. And these, now in retrospect, looking at those video reports, I don't think it was as much a propaganda thing by the Russians as it was the fact that the president was being taken to these places and being told, this is what all our money that you have allocated to rebuild the Russian military is doing. But when in reality, it was rotting on the vine because everybody was lining their pockets.
Right.
Corruption is endemic in Russia. And so the military that Vladimir Putin thought he was coming to Ukraine with is not the real Russian military. It was the Potemkin village that the Russian military industrial complex and the officer class was selling him.
Right. Well, that's also the case that maybe Putin isn't pushing those people to the front because he doesn't want the competition, but also his generals do the exact same thing, that this is a cultural thing amongst them, that like somebody might take my job and I've got the ear of the dude, and if somebody else tells him where I'm screwing up, I'm going to broom that guy to the front. And so as much as Putin might, I don't doubt that there's a couple of people like, you get to go fight. In a couple of moments. In the case of these other sub-generals, I don't doubt they're sending their colonel generals to the front for that very reason. So it's a
dog-eat-dog world.
It is, and again that goes to, and we got a break coming up in just about a minute, but that goes to. Again, that conversation about inalienable rights that you fight for versus you only get what you take. And, that is more than any difference. And yes, it is in direction, but it is also, there is an alliance in achievement that you have to secure those rights. The government is for the purpose of securing those rights. That's what a democracy is all about, is that we believe you have these rights, and therefore our government, the only real purpose of it is to make sure you retain as many of them as you possibly can without someone taking them away from you or you taking them away from someone within the country.
How do you transfer something that is inalienable to actually written law?
Yes. Yeah, it's a huge, extraordinary step. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this with more Philip. And your questions. Follow Philip Ittner, 1L, 2 T's on Twitter. That'll help you out. And you can ask him some questions there as well. And then, of course, Johnny will have some as soon as we come back.
We got to get to these questions.
We
keep getting sidetracked.
It happens.
Al, you've been the best. Thank you so much.
You want me to prep you?
Sure.
So the one person was asking about did Ukraine hear what Marjorie Taylor Greene said to surrender?
Her statement is that. And this, you've heard this a bunch. And this is Mersheimer's argument.
No, they don't pay attention to her. They have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. That's and again, like even Lindsey Graham saying stuff. People are like, everybody has mouthy representatives, especially in a democracy. That's one of the other things. You know what? One of the joys.
They might hear it, but they're going to shuffle it off.
Right. So here's another intercept.
They're not stupid people. They're not stupid people.
Right. We'll get to that one as well. So don't preview them because we'll just start answering them.
You're right. You will.
So, by the way, here's another
right. We'll just answer them now.
This is another intercepted message from Russians talking. This guy calling his mother. He says, "Mom, half of my regiment are dead." She says, "Dead?" He says, "Well, it's a war. Our commander was blown up." She says, I cry every fucking day. And he says, I signed a contract. We'll make some money. That was the end of the conversation. That guy was blown up, crawling out.
Ukrainians have got to be careful.
That guy was blown up, crawling out of a tank.
Jesus.
Just a few minutes later.
Yeah, well, they have the Wagner boys here.
The what?
The Wagner boys.
Oh, right. Yeah, the private soldiers.
The Russian Blackwater.
Right.
Yep.
Those are the that were effectively like the little green men and all those guys, in the original Crimea invasion.
Yeah. By the way, we killed a whole bunch of them in Syria.
Yeah.
Because when they actually came up against an effective military, they learned a lesson or two.
Yeah. So nuts.
It's crazy.
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, we'll just hold because I want this actually to stay on, stuff on the air. How much time do we have, Chicago?
You have 45 seconds.
Excellent. Okay, cool.
Sounds like a Cylon to me. Like from the old Buck Rogers or Battlestar Galactica. Buck Rogers.
What?
Do you guys hear that? Hold on. Nope. Loop back audio 2.
Back in 20.
Thank you. I want to be able to hear audio. I just switch it to this one. Hold on. Now, can you guys hear?
Happy? What was it? Happy part at the end?
The happy ending.
Hold on. Happy ending. Oh, please! I need one. If I can hear Kate McCucci one more time, I'll be a happy man.
Right. Play it as a request. Yes. Welcome back to the show. So, one of the biggest conversation points about this, Philip, since you're there, is about the messaging. And I have a question about that once we answer a couple of other questions. So we've got some people in the chat who've had some questions that they want answered to, or try to get an answer on. What do we have next, Johnny?
Yeah, so I'll throw this one out there again. Does anybody in Ukraine care anything about what Marjorie Taylor Greene says?
No.
And next, right.
Yeah. Does Phil think that the Arnold video will make any difference to the Russians? I haven't seen the
actually, I do. I mean, look, I'm Californian. I have a love-hate relationship with Arnold.
Right.
But he is revered in Russia. And he was very smart to make the point of, look, I had a hero when I was a kid, and my father was broken at the siege of Leningrad. I mean, he hit on so many themes that speak so deeply to the Russians. It's why on my social media, I keep putting out the painting by the Russian artist who I can't recall right now, but it is the famous painting of the death of Ivan the Terrible's son, because his son came to him and told him a cold hard truth, and that basically a military campaign wasn't going well, and in his madness, Ivan the Terrible, Ivan Grozny, Ivan Четвертый, killed that which he proposed to, what he proclaimed to love. And I think that's what's happening with Russia right now. We need to touch upon these things in Russian culture that they will understand. And much of that is their own nationalism. So if you go to them and say, I really revered this weightlifter and he changed my life, and I think that the spirit of this guy is not what Putin is telling you, that's a way that maybe actually a message can get through.
Right. Gave me this coffee cup.
Okay, go ahead.
As a matter of fact, he gave me this coffee cup to drink my coffee out of every morning ever since, and he's been the big hero of mine. This is, he literally held up.
My father was broken after the
siege of Leningrad, this type of thing and this type of nature.
He's
Yeah.
right. A lot of those Nazi soldiers live with that for the rest of their lives, and a lot of these Russian soldiers are going to live with this for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Johnny, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
One person asked, how many troops from other Russian-friendly countries are actually coming over? Is Phil hearing of any?
Yeah, they're the Serb. There are the Serb units. There are Chechens. And there's all sorts. There's a world within the Russian sphere of influence that believes the messaging that's coming out of Moscow, and they're willing to fight against the big, corrupt, evil West. So yeah, that's happening, sure. But the response the Ukrainians have, especially like the Syrians that have said that they're going to come here, they're like, okay, come on over. There's plenty of ground here that needs sowing with your blood. Right. It's terrible, but it's true.
Well, I mean, at a certain point, how much death do you want to watch before at some point you just go where your language catches up to the experience you're having? I mean, that's just a reality.
The Ukrainians themselves are like, we are spilling so much of our own blood in sacrifice to actually have an identity and a future that we can determine. That if you want to run your people into the grindhouse that is this country, we are putting our own people willingly into that grindhouse. If you want to send others in, we're willing. And the thing is, there's such overwhelming support within the populace itself that, I mean, it's terrible. It's awful. I see a sense of bravery in that, and I see a sense of like esprit de corps. But at the end of the day, it still means a lot of people are going to come here and die, and a lot of people are here dying. And it's just at the end of the day, they can't win. They can't. The Russians, Putin, cannot win here. It's not going to happen. It's just not. So the time has come for Ukraine to be a nation, and they're not going to bow down from it. And as terrible as it is, there is also a sense of like, come and have a go. All right. You'll send as many as you want.
Yeah, by the way, somebody in the chat said Ilya Ripin, I believe, is the artist you're talking about, possibly.
The painting. The painting. Yes. Yeah, it's a beautiful painting.
Right. So, and do you have another question, Johnny?
Yeah. Do you think that Putin really believed that this would be an easy victory?
Yes, I do think he believed it was going to be an easy victory, because I think he's been lied to by his own military command. He thought he had a world-class military. He does not. And he also really did legitimately. He is so self-deluded, thinking that the Ukrainians are just a sub-tribe of Slavs who have been kind of perverted by a Germanic fascist, Western American, what have you, capitalist, corporate, power structure. That he can't fathom the idea that a people would actually stand up on their own. It's beyond his capability of understanding. He expressed that in Maidan. He is expressing that now. He thought that once he was the one pushing the narrative, that the narrative would be adopted without resistance. And frankly, that's delusional. It shows how out of touch he is, because these people have been saying for centuries, we want to be our own country. And they've been saying it loudly since the fall of the Soviet Union. He chose not to listen to that.
Right. I have, so let's see, we're pretty good on time on this.
One more.
Okay, yeah, one more question.
Yeah. The Russians have access to a free internet, like a real one.
In Ukraine?
Or in Russia?
No, in Russia you don't. In Russia you do not. He has shut down every major international social media. There is a version of Facebook called VKontakte, which is in Cyrillic. So it's structured differently because of the actual very fundamental difference of a language with a different alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny to note that Contact is basically just a Facebook clone. So there's an internal Russian internet. Nevertheless, there are another reason why Vladimir Putin is living in the 20th century, not the 21st, is he doesn't understand that his young people are way smarter than he is, and they have VPNs. They have VPNs and they have ways. Sure. They're online. They're seeing it. They're all seeing it. They're all able to see it if they want to. The problem is that they are so brainwashed that many of them, and I'm afraid to say it is a majority within Russia, would rather believe the lies that they know are lies than swallow the bitter pill that people are being slaughtered on their behalf and in their name.
Right. It's also
it's willful ignorance.
Right, and some people have a sort of an emotional and moral scotoma where they're like, I don't want to believe that something this awful is happening in my name, so they can delude themselves about it. And no country is free of those kind of people anyways, ever. That's understandable. The volume aspect is really due to the...
We have them by space.
Yeah. But the curious thing is that we have sort of a weird flip-flop happening in the United States, that it's the right wing that's normally jingoistic, nationalistic, America, rah, 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 that is all of a sudden Putin, rah, 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 and we really just need to roll over and let him do this. I think part of it...
Why do you think all the God talk? Why do you think all the God talk during the spectacle?
Oh, yes, right. Yes, when Trump, beg your pardon, when Putin started...
Freudian slip.
Yeah, he actually made up his own Bible quote. He says, as it says in the great book, the Bible, that many Christian believers believe in, which is one of those things where he's the pretense that anybody's allowed to believe whatever they want, that kind of idea. Is that where he's trying to throw that? But he was basically saying
and also the fact that you've got the main press secretary for the foreign ministry coming out and making his speech about how we as a people and as a state believe in tradition and believe and know that we are with God. Right.
Yes. And he said, our fighters are operating in that great, line from the Bible that a man will truly lay down, a good friend will lay down his soul for his fellow man or whatever, which is just made up battle bullshit.
And Putin in his speech from yesterday, when he told people he was going to spit them out, the betrayers who were more interested in their
insects,
foie gras, their oysters, and also threw in for good measure,
gender,
that there is, the gender conversation. He knows who he's talking to, and he has fellow travelers in the United States that he knows he's talking to.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Nick
I want to make one quick point, and then, Johnny, if you have another question, let's go for it. But I want to make a quick point in this.
Yep.
And I made it in a vlog that I made earlier, and I'm going to try and get back to them. I took some time off to grieve for my friend, and I had to kind of do some mental health stuff. But I'm going to start vlogging again.
Good.
But I made the point that they don't actually believe this stuff. They're using it to attack us because they have one enemy in the world that they fixate on, and it's us. And they know our own sense of self-analysis and our own awareness of our own faults is something that they can prey upon to divide us. And they use it as a weapon. They don't really care about this stuff because they don't do it internally within their own country. There is no rule of law. Racism is endemic, and they don't ever assess it. And they have a class system that is far worse than ours. It's feudalism, frankly. But they know that if they poke at us and wedge themselves into the issues that we ourselves are concerned about, that it will contribute to deteriorating our unity. And they use it as a weapon, and and they have been studying us for over a century. We are the focus of their entire intelligence. 90 5% of their intelligence is directed right at us as Americans, and they try and attack us in that way. They don't really care about it.
And
when they do all this stuff, it's because it's for consumption both domestically and to those who hear that message in the States.
Correct.
And our fellow travelers.
Yeah. And I would say that weaponizing our view of freedom and weaponizing the very rights that we take for granted in a lot of cases has to be the system they use, because it's the exact thing they're trying to quell in their own countries. And they can go, see, this is what happens when you have too much freedom. This is what happens when you have too much conversation, when you have too many differing points of view. It's exactly what the Chinese do. They talk about it exactly the same way. And this is how they squashed, by the way, the Ukrainian democracy you were talking about earlier that existed centuries ago. This is, just there's so much room for agent provocateurs and sabotage and tribalism being fomented artificially. And unfortunately for them, I think they were very surprised that all this work they've done in the modern era with social media and all this stuff, and it still didn't take off. It still didn't work like it was supposed to. It was supposed to all tee up, and Tucker Carlson was supposed to say this to his minions, and they were supposed to carry the message, and they were supposed to meet no resistance in these pathways that were set up. None of the dams, none of the bulwarks would work, and it would just flow through. Well, and magically...
As an unabashedly patriotic American, I will say that is because fundamentally we are actually a really good people.
Yes, we are. And ultimately, if people are given enough time to stretch their legs in their own freedom long enough, they get there too. And because human beings aren't that different, but cultures can define people for decades and hundreds of years on an interpersonal level. We got to take a break. We'll be back.
The reason we get upset at injustice is because we want justice.
Right.
In other countries, injustice is just a way of life.
That's right. That's absolutely right. It's within reach. It's like a girlfriend I had that was so gorgeous, and she spent so much time in front of the mirror because perfection was actually in reach.
Lucky.
Every little thing, but was something because she was so close to perfection, and I don't have to worry about that at all. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Like and subscribe. Give a thumbs up. Infotainmentwars.com.
It's what kills me about Americans.
Yes, please.
Is Americans that don't travel abroad are not aware of the
idea.
Fact that, yeah, I mean, it's what we expect there to be justice, and that is actually a revolutionary idea.
Yeah. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Well, they aren't. We do, but a lot of other people, and that's where a lot of people are like, nation states don't matter, boundaries are just artificial. I'm like, hey, dummy, there's a bunch of people who don't think your truths are self-evident. They don't think justice is a thing. And if you didn't have that border as defining what you believe and they believe, you don't have any of those protections.
This is the most important war. This is the most
of our
important
lifetime.
Inflection point in our lifetime.
Yep. And this idea that
I'm not kidding. This is going to determine whether or not the idea of might makes right, or whether or not that you have the right to self-determination actually matters.
Philip, here you go.
Oh, is it Kate?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I can't hear it. No. I'm going to have to turn on my YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I can't hear it.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, we're getting some feedback, so you have to turn it off now, Phil. We played that just for Phil. We come back from that.
Later.
Yes.
Love her to death.
Yeah. it is a.
We're getting
Hold on, we're getting feedback from you, kiddo.
We played that just for Phil. Wait.
Cycle loopa loopa cycle looping cycle.
Okay, sorry.
There we go.
Sorry.
No problem. Not at all.
Wanted to hear.
Yeah. So and that's why we played it. And again, one of the reasons why like I started doing Nerd Halen, for example, was because when Caleb, who's the guitar player, presented the idea to me, I was like, people need this kind of stuff. Outside the fight for democracy and all this other stuff, once you solve those things, what are you solving for? You're solving for joy and laughter and family and fun and gatherings and human beings getting along and all those things. So any art I can do that does that, I'm in. 100%, let's do it.
For the silly. I'm all for the silly.
That's right. And so that little song, the happy ending song that we play.
I've seen enough. Let me take a second here, Hal, if you don't mind terribly. And I don't know what the framing is for my camera here, but this is my buddy.
Yes.
That I started talking about here.
Yes.
Pierre.
We can see him.
One of the reasons
it
why
shut
I
off. Hold on.
Being in really bad.
Hold on. It switched to a picture. Hold on. It switched to a different picture. There you go. Back him up. There you go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Where's Pierre?
Nope.
Where Pierre?
You'll
well,
find
anyhow, regardless.
Yes. We saw him in the beginning.
Yeah. The reason why Pierre and other buddies of mine that I've had in bad locations, some of them are so great to have with you, is because even the darkest of hours, they bring you joy.
Yes.
And joy is not a small thing. A dear friend of mine pointed out to me a few years ago a quote by Stan Lee. The great late Stan Lee, who said, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically the point of, everybody kind of poo-poos art and pop culture, but when you're in your darkest hour, the thing that actually reminds you that you're alive and that there is joy in being human and being alive is art. I mean, we've seen it in this fight so far. We saw the young girl singing Let It Go.
Yes.
Russian. I mean, come on.
Yes.
We saw the band in Odessa in front of sandbags playing "Don't Worry, Be Happy." We saw. I've seen in this town, just go again to my vlogs, people, just an outpouring of artistry, because you're right. Once you get past the argument of what rights do you have, and where does politics and government interfere with, or where is that boundary between a collective and a governance and governments and your individuality and all these kind of things. At the end of the day, what you really want to be is happy.
Yes.
The pursuit of happiness.
Right.
So
the people playing piano when they're leaving their apartments, or the people, I just posted, there's a rabbi in Ukraine who was just singing, a song for Ukraine, as he walked out of his, out of the temple that they had, for Purim. That ultimately, that is what life is all about. And a lot of the fighting that, we've experienced, resource wars over time are about, so you have enough food to eat and enough fuel for transportation so that you and your life can actually do those other things. That's the other thing people forget in the midst of this. But more than anything, in a fight about democracy, which is what this is, at its very root, that is, when that fight is behind you, that's where life can take meaning. And so these fights are for the absolute meaning of life. This is an argument between the Ukrainian view of what, and the democratic, and in many ways the Western view of what life is about, and the Russian autocratic, dictatorial, and to some degrees the Chinese or Iranian or Saudi system.
And look, neither of us are saying, I think, Hal, if I can put words in your mouth, and disagree with me if you will, but Russians want to be joyful too. They're wonderful, beautiful people. I have very dear Russian friends. That is not to say that Russia doesn't have a culture of joy and beauty and
when they're allowed,
sweet, subtle, lovely, sublime things in life that make life worth living. But there is also there is a difference in that there is a belief in kind of a fatalism and power structure, and again,
which by the way comes from a lot of like the geographic. Yeah, well, there's the geographic nature of the country itself, what it actually can and does produce. There's a lot of a lot of the cultural stuff that comes from that. But the point I want to make is that what this fight, and I hope people view this for what the fight that it actually is, which is an argument about whether or not you should be able to dictate the terms of your own joy. You should be able to dictate the terms of your own happiness,
fundamentally,
or
that's
force.
What this is.
Yes, or force your version of joy and in a fundamental fight on
Identity,
someone else.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is
and that's why I am so proud to be here.
Yeah.
I am so lucky, and I am so proud. People say, my God, you're in danger and all the rest of it. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I don't doubt there is not an infinitesimal part of my heart or my soul or my brain that questions why I'm here.
Right.
This is where I'm supposed to be, and I am so lucky to be here because these people are doing something that as an American, I know that's a bias, but and maybe I'm putting too much on my own self-identity as an American, but I believe it. I mean, these people are fighting for their future in a sense to determine their own future, and to me that is a beautiful thing, and I'm proud to be here. And I think if anybody is listening to this and anybody is even on the edge of questioning whether or not who is in the right and who is in the wrong in this conflict, I urge them to just take a look at what we have spoken about.
Yes.
And just understand that these people here on this ground are actually fighting for the ability to determine their own future and to follow their own joy. And we as Americans who did the same thing and created our own country so that we as individuals could actually pursue our own joy should do everything in our power to support these people. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm reaching out to every one of your listeners and every one of your audience members to urge them to put aside any partisan politics or anything that you may hear from the Russians with their disinformation campaign and their argument that there is no right to the pursuit of happiness. That if you disagree with that, stand now, because this is the moment, and it is an inflection point. And if we let this country go under the thumb of Moscow again, then all of us suffer.
Agreed. That's the end of the show. Thank you so much for being with us, Philip. I really appreciate it, brother. It means a lot. Johnny Million, thank you for shepherding us through all these questions.
Absolutely.
Thanks for everybody who had a question, and we will see you, Chicago, on the other side. Thanks, Chicago. Absolutely.
Sorry, my cat puked in the middle of all of that, so I got kind of distracted.
That's perfect. All right. So there's one more question in here from one of our super chats in here that he goes,
Sure.
do they have copies of the Anarchist Cookbook, etc., for the people and hack targets? I'm like, there was a flyer, a laminated flyer.
In the style of the 80s.
Yes, right. And the answer is,
the Anarchist Cookbook.
Oh yeah, I had a copy.
I bought it at Annapurna on Telegraph Street in Berkeley.
Right. Yeah. That place, that bookstore is hysterical. Like, if you want a left-wing Antifa toilet bowl of like crazy thought. Yeah.
People's Republic of Berkeley, baby.
That's right. Hilarious. But with a Starbucks and an Amoeba and a John Flugelhorn shoe store or whatever too. It's I'm all for
Berkeley though.
Me too.
Berkeley. It gives me a kick.
I want communism with convenience. That's what I want. You know what I mean? If there was some way to blend 7-Eleven and communism, that's Berkeley. Yeah,
and a good Bears game.
That's right. There you go. I don't doubt that they do. There was literally that laminated flyer that was going around that teaches you how to make a Molotov cocktail. That was everywhere.
Okay.
You got. By the way, for when you meet it, when you come back, also
they don't need the anarchist. They don't need the anarchist cookbook because their own government
is teaching them how. There's nothing anarchist about it.
Teaching them everything they need to know.
That's right. That's right.
It's like if guys from take a state. If from
Wisconsin.
State okay, right. Or it's a bunch of guys from Madison came to the little towns in Wisconsin and said, "This is how you make a Molotov cocktail." That's happening here.
Yes.
If your local alderman showed up at your doorstep and said, "This is an AK-47. This is how you load it."
Latch it here. The clip goes in like this. When you're holding, be careful not to hold too far back because you'll knock the clip out.
Don't shoot the first line guys because they're good. They'll shoot back at you. Shoot at the guys that come a couple hours later because they're just a bunch of kids in cars.
Right. Yeah. Circle around behind them. Don't let them know where you are. Right. That whole thing. You'll shoot later. We'll let you know. Right. Keep your powder dry. Right. Well, that's how they encircled all these convoys. That's the amazing part.
Yep.
So today, this is what, this 2 days ago, Russian oil hit a rolling average of $27, down 25.73 from the day before. And here's what a lot of people are saying. You are creating a situation where China's going to buy cheap Russian oil, and that's going to upend the whole petrodollar, blah, blah, blah. And here's what I would like to say, and I'm curious about your take, and then I'll let you both go and on about your day. Right now, the Russian oil rigs, delivery system, pipelines, everybody are basically working for free. You want the USSR back? You got it, baby, because you can't stop working because you got to produce that stuff, and you're getting nothing for it. You're pumping it out of the ground. Once it's gone, it's gone.
And we're giving you rubles, which are worth nothing.
Right? Yeah. And a lot of people are like, somebody was saying they're eliminating.
By the way, we're not restocking shelves, so that whole breadline stuff that's coming soon.
Yep. And by the way, Nestle is one of the holdout companies that isn't stopping their deliveries. So as an American company, finger wag.
It goes back to this argument of like, oh, we don't want bad sanctions because we don't want to hurt the Russian people. Well, okay, but the Russian people are supporting a military campaign that are killing the Ukrainian people. So sanctions that hurt the Russian people, or a Russian military action supported by the Russian people, which are killing
actively.
Actively, that equation I want to be on.
I agree. I actively agree. And everybody's like, sanctions hurt the people well, you don't get to play in my sandbox if you're going to treat it like kitty litter. That's the thing. Yeah. You can't. We have the world.
Don't tell me you don't know.
Right. The world economic system has no responsibility to allow we don't let the mob do it, technically speaking. If we catch the mob, we kick them out, they go to jail, they lose their resources, but nobody's going, if we take mob money out, what are we going to do? Nobody's arguing like, what happens to all that?
Baker, the bakery front that's used by the mafia. Think about that baker. He's going to lose his job.
Yeah,
I mean, all that drug money that's going to be
all those files in cakes. All the files in the cakes they send into prison. That nobody eats because they'll get lead poisoning. Why? The whole thing is, what do we do if we remove cartels from the monetary system? I got news for you. There would be a fluctuation.
Meanwhile, there's potentially over 1,000 people stuck beneath that theater in Mariupol.
Yes, exactly. Right. This is not even the morality of this question is disgusting. Like even the discussion of it shows. And these are supposedly the people who are pro-life, by the way. Yeah. So, anyways.
Philip, Johnny, when you brought the question up from Marjorie Taylor Greene, also as well, is that, she brought up a talking point from the Kremlin about Nazism, And when we talk next, how I'd really like to address that whole like accusation of Nazism, because there's meat on the bone there, but it needs to be dispelled.
Right. Well, initially, by the way, there's two fronts on it. The Azov Battalion, which, by the way, initially started as that, but then get watered down with local Ukrainians who joined the militia for that area. They're not an aligned Nazi organization.
Well, really, it goes back to Stepan Bandera.
Yeah.
And Stepan Bandera is a really bad guy, and it needs to be discussed at length. I mean, they do sell his portrait on the streets here in Lviv. I saw it today.
Sure.
And his flag is available at every souvenir stand. But you got to understand, this is a guy who, I'm not excusing Stepan Bandera. Stepan Bandera needs to be cast in the role that he actually was within Ukraine. Right. But they have deified him because he fought against the Soviets. But he was a bad guy. He fought with the Nazis. He contributed to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
He's not a guy to be idolized or appreciated, but because he was first and foremost a Ukrainian nationalist fighter who wanted a nation state for Ukraine, and because that has been such a struggle for this country for so long that they're willing to overlook his fascist activities, it is red meat for the Russians, and they need to divest themselves from Bandera as quickly as they possibly can. Even though, yes, he was fighting for a national identity for a country that had been fighting for centuries, but when it also just gone through a forced famine that killed 3 million people.
Yeah, right. The Holodomor, which is where Voldemort from Harry Potter gets his name. It's agreed. And again, you're in a situation where this is a transitional country. There were founding fathers in the United States. Only half of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence were slave owners. The other half were not. The majority of Americans ultimately after that point weren't. There was, it was like we're talking about 8% of the populace actually had slaves and all that kind of stuff. And yet some of those people
we had abolitionism
from day one. Yep. And from day one there were pro-slavery non-abolitionists who fought the British and stopped them from attacking us, which would have maintained monarchical rule, which would have meant everybody is technically a serf under this person forever and would have been proto-slavery for all.
The fact that John Brown freaked Frederick Douglass off is really something we need to keep in mind.
Right, yeah. So these, again, that's going to happen in a transition, and that's a shallower transition even than now, right? That's sooner than we're not talking about 200 plus years ago. So it's going to take time for that to wade off. But the other thing is that in Donbass and others, the Russians put in, they literally shepherded in neo-Nazi guys and would just have at it because they have some in their prisons, just like we got Peckerwoods in American prisons. So they just dump them in Ukraine and go, they'll take you in, knock yourself out. And then they use them as target practice and go, see, we found another Nazi. They literally drop the guy off, shoot him.
The Russian Nazis are so fanatically anti-Semitic that they see, that Wall Street is controlled by the Jewish,
it's all the Soros stories you see. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conspiracy.
The Rothschilds and yada yada.
And there's fertile ground here. They can sow that here easily, but it's all a bunch of bull. Look, they never got a seat in the Rada. They don't have a good turnout in elections.
Right.
When we talk about nationalism in Ukraine, you have to understand that it's not just nationalism the way we look at it in the West of like, oh my God, these ultra nationalists and they actually literally mean nation, a nation state, which they have never had before.
Right.
They're nationalists in the sense that we deserve to be a nation. Not in the sense of like we are the best nation in the world, and we have to be the white and this and this kind of belief and this system.
There is
ultra nationalism the way we think about it. They're talking about nationalism in the sense of like we deserve to be a nation state.
Yes, And by the way, there's a mix of nationalists in the United States that are like strong border national security ones. And that's old school Republicans for a very long time. But they aligned themselves with effectively white nationalists in and amongst them. And now it's become watery. And I think we project that wateriness onto other people too. And they've, the white nationalists in the United States have laid claim to words like freedom, patriotism, and the flag and all those kind of things. And they've been handed over in some ways, which is why I don't do it. It's why I wear the American flag proudly. It's why I don't give away forms on that. I'm cool.
I'm proud to be British.
Right.
I'm proud to be British, but I am equally proud to be an American.
Right. Yes. Uh-oh, he's going to start undressing. That's right. Save that for the Philip Ittner OnlyFans. I'm gonna let you guys go, and then I'm gonna go feed my child, and I will see you guys later on.
Before I let you go, just quickly, are you back next week? Are you back in Vegas or LA?
Yes, I am. So I can loop you in.
Do you want to try a weekday thing?
Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. Let's schedule.
Get in touch with me directly, right?
Yes, and I'll send you the link. I'll do a similar situation to today because
I am happy to chuckle away at your witty analysis of the news on a daily basis as a member of your audience, and I am proud to be a member of your audience. But if you would like to have me on during the week, I'm happy to do it.
I would love that. So, and today, this week, other than this, the radio version,
you guys are great. I love your audience.
Yes, they're awesome. The Midas Touch brothers sing the praises of my audience. Everybody who knows, the sparklers, the crowd that shows up, grows to love them because they're smart, respectful, and they fear no trolls. So off we go. Take care of yourself. Be safe.
Fixate on joy.
Yes.
I'm safe. Don't worry, Hal.
Excellent. And I'll see you guys on Monday coming up. And Johnny, I'll see you next Saturday.
Yeah, you will.
I'm going to listen to Kate McCucci.
Yeah. Right. Yes. I will. Absolutely. Okay. Bye, guys. Cool. Cheers. See you later. Bye. Thanks so much. There they go. And off they go. Okay. Hold on. Whoops. Minus. There we go. Whoop. There we go. And chat room. I got to move this down so I can do this. Chat room. Thank you guys for joining us today. Appreciate it more than you know. Hope you enjoyed the show. And Philip is serious when he says you guys are fantastic, because you absolutely are. Hold on. Let me go back to Recam and then to just me. There you go. This is a little better. Because you guys are great. And again, I want to thank the trolls for being with us today, because you expand our spread, especially the pro-Russian sock puppet trolls. You guys are extra special because you give us that international boost. You know what I mean? I know you're using a VPN and stuff, but it's fine. I don't mind. It's totally okay. It's all right. I'm not going on Stuttering John today. But I will try. I'm going to try and give him Philip's info right now to have him have Philip on. So fingers crossed. I got to hang up with you guys to do that. And we'll make that happen. So peace. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else, and I will see you guys much later. There you go. All right. Bye. Look at that. Huge chat today, by the way. 1,616 people just in the single chat. That's nuts. I love you guys. Thank you guys for being here. It warms my heart. Don't forget to like and subscribe.